Hi, welcome. My name is JodieLynn Craven, founder of Abundance Consciousness, and this is my dear friend, Heather Marie.
Hi, I'm Heather Marie, founder of Soulgate. Welcome to Channel Squared, where we have extraordinary conversations about everyday life topics.
Yeah, and today we are talking about how the ego stops you from asking for help. In a world where we're so intricately connected to all of the beings, why, as a human, do we struggle so much to seek for assistance or allow ourselves to receive help? The ego seems to tell us it's not safe. If you don't do it yourself, you're not worthy. And this is a distortion meant to keep you separate from humanity, separate from your true power, and feeling alone in this big universe.
Yes.
This is a huge topic.
It is a huge topic.
A huge topic.
Absolutely. Because the thing is that the ego can drive the car, and it does for a lot of humanity. It's this human brain of, keep you safe, keep you secure, keep you inflamed even sometimes.
So inflamed.
Like,
what do you mean inflamed?
I mean, upset, angry, irritated, in the United States, for example, when the election happened, there were a lot of inflamed people, right? You had some people who wanted Trump to win. You had some people who wanted Biden to win. The Biden people hated the Trump people and hated Trump, and the Trump people hated Biden, and maybe the Biden people too. So the thing is that the ego was so involved in all of that everybody was just inflamed, and it didn't matter like what one candidate was saying over another candidate, or even what really the issues were. It was just about them being inflamed, because the ego was like, I don't like that.
Yeah. And it really keeps us stuck in our old perceptions or things that we feel it has to be. I have found that when asking for help, one of the biggest barriers for my students coming and asking for help and taking the more course or doing those things is getting past this egoic barrier of, if I admit that I need to attract more money, it means that I'm bad with money or I'm not doing well in my business. And this is all coming from this ego place of, I can't admit it or else I'm a huge failure. And it stops us from progressing, stops individuals from progressing in their lives, in their relationships, and in their spirituality, frankly, because you get stuck in, oh, well, if I'm vulnerable or if I tell people there's an issue or I seek help or someone else's opinion, it means I'm not good enough. I have to do it all myself, which is sheer and utter bullshit.
Totally. Absolutely. And the thing is that the ego definitely has a place, right? I mean, we need the ego because it does keep us safe, and it does sort of create that fight or flight response that assists us when we really need it. But left unchecked, it'll run the show. It will run the show. So if I can paint a picture here of the let's use like the gym rat, okay? The guy that's all, brute force, right? And no brain. So if you can like create this image in your mind of this, guy that's just like, I'm the big tough guy that works out all day, and he's running around doing his thing, and he just, everything is by force and size and mass, as opposed to maybe like logic, peace, calm,
feeling.
Exactly. So if he's going to get something done, he's just going to mow it down, get it done, crush it out, pound it out. That is like almost like a physical example of ego, right? It will take anything by brute force, including you.
Yeah. Another really great example of this is we'll see it a lot in corporate structures where somebody is climbing the corporate ladder and trying to get to the top. And my dad always has said this to me, some people will lean their ladder up against a wall and then they get to the top and they realize it's not what they want. And this is the ego coming into it of, looking at other people and this competition of, oh, my house needs to look like this, and my car needs to look like that, and my wife or my husband needs to look like this, and if it doesn't look like that, then it's bad, or it's not going to be good. But we haven't really checked in with ourselves. Do we want that life? Do you really want to be in that corporate position? Do you want to be that type of entrepreneur? Do you want to have that type of spouse?
Right.
And we get lost in this egoic part of ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. And that it's that keeping up with the Joneses, right? So like that whole philosophy is exactly that. It's the ego running your life, running the show. It's a good thing to have ego. Like, I don't think that like the ego dying or it being crushed completely out of existence is a good idea either, because it is what propels a lot of people, right? So like if you didn't have the ego, there would be no real competition at all, not just for you and somebody else, but for you and yourself. That's the piece of you that says, oh, I could have done better. Oh, if I do it this other way, I can accomplish more, be greater, climb that ladder. Even if you're not competing with somebody else, you can compete with yourself. And so I think that there's a healthy balance that can be maintained of like, how much do you let your ego drive the car? So, and the thing is that because it thinks it knows everything, it can stop you from asking for help. Sometimes let's use like that money example, right? Someone gets into financial distress and they would rather live in a box than actually ask for help, which would make it a lot easier if they just asked for help. But because the ego always wants to look good while avoiding looking bad, it will never ask. It's almost like people will hand it to you and the ego will be like, oh no, I'm good. I got this. Don't worry.
Yeah.
No problem.
Don't admit defeat. But is it really defeat?
Right. Is it?
These are the questions that we need to start asking ourselves when we find ourselves in this place of being inside of the ego and letting the ego drive the car, as you said, is I mean, what do I want? And what's holding me back? Because it's really a perception of the way that you see yourself if you do ask for help, or if you open up and you're vulnerable. That's another thing that we talked about. Vulnerability is really magnetic. It's really sexy when somebody is vulnerable, and I don't mean just like in the sexual way, but you're just attracted to somebody when they open up their heart. But the ego stops us from doing that because there's that fear there that if you do, then you will be punished or hurt in some way. And really that puts up a wall between you and everyone within the world, you and your spouse, you and your business partners, just even being on social media, it comes across as inauthentic, or it can come across as inauthentic because you're just trying to be something you're not, and maybe you don't even want to be that. I don't even know if that makes sense, but
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see, let's talk about social media, for example, because I think this is a really clear, like, understandable example to have. And that is, it's the highlight reel of people's lives, right? So few people get on social media and are truly in their authentic, vulnerable state, right? Every once in a while, you'll come across a unicorn where it's a very vulnerable post. They're sharing about something that they're going through in their life. And maybe it's something really bad, but that's a unicorn post. Those things they just don't show up very often. So, most of the time, those posts are the highlight reel, like what's going good in somebody's life. But is that authentic? Right? It's not authentic. Nobody's life is perfect all the time like that. Let's just call it what it is, right? People have shitty things that happen in their life. Okay. They may be hugely shitty. They may be a little shitty, but they're shitty and they're there. Okay. Yeah. And how somebody perceives the shittiness of the shitty things that are going on is entirely up to them. So, somebody could have their house broken into and be completely robbed and all their shit's gone. And now they're like, oh, damn, they even took the front door. That sucks. Right. Somebody else may look at it and go, hell yeah, I get to buy all new shit. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just perspective. But I think that the reality is that stuff happens, and how that shapes them and how they are authentic about it is really what sets you apart from being ordinary or extraordinary.
Yeah.
Right. And so when people are vulnerable and they're honest about where they've been, what they're going through, these types of things, like you said, it attracts people to you.
Yeah.
We see, we're both very tied in with like the spiritual community and like what people are putting on social media. And, we're all business owners. So we all, use social media to, touch people. And when you are utilizing this and you're not being authentic in how you achieved the result or how you are presenting yourself, it's a fraud, right? And it is 100% ego driving the car.
What's interesting though, is as you say that, I think about some of the people that I have, learned certain things and realized that they weren't being 100% authentic, whether that was on social media or in a friendship or whatever else. And it's so interesting because the reason why someone would do this, and I've been guilty of this in the past before, I'm sure you have, Heather, of, letting the ego drive the car. The reason why I've done this in the past was a perception from ego that I needed to look like I had all my shit together. And if I didn't, it meant that, whatever I, taught or the program that I brought into the world, then it doesn't work, or, it's not perfect. It's not good enough. And it's such a false reality because it's your ego saying you have to be perfect for other people to think that everything is perfect for you. But then you come across as inauthentic,
right?
And a fraud. So, you're trying to put something up there that's completely fraudulent, or it's not 100% true or accurate or authentic. And then people see that, and it's the opposite effect of what your ego is trying so hard to do.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that that's such an easy thing to get sucked into. I mean, I know I've gotten sucked into it, which is probably why I don't post a lot on social, because I want to be authentic. And if I can't be authentic, I just say nothing.
I just say
nothing.
Yeah.
You'll find me under a rock outside.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've been through that too. And it's interesting though, I have less of that ego around asking for assistance. For me, I've always had this attitude of, if I don't know, I'll figure it out. And not knowing doesn't mean that I'm not good enough or not perfect, or, I don't think anybody's perfect, but, it didn't mean anything bad about me. It just meant there was a piece of knowledge that I was missing. When I went through the foreclosure of my home, I didn't understand how any of that was going to work. And that's, like you just said, especially when it comes to money, people will bury their head in the sand and they're like, I'm not going to talk about it with anyone. And I've had this in my brokerage business where I've sat down with clients and it was pretty much too late, or on the cusp of too late. I never want to say too late because there's always something you can do. I believe that about all things, but it would have been so much better if you would have just said something, a month ago, even, 20 minutes ago, you should have just said something. And for me, when I was going through that experience personally, I knew I didn't have the knowledge to get through it. I knew that I had no idea what was going to happen. And that scared the shit out of me. But not enough to bury my head in the sand and not ask, because I was, I was afraid of what people would think. Sure, that was there too. And it was a burden that I, would carry with me, of I needed to deal with those feelings. But at that point, I needed the knowledge first, and then I would deal with the things after. And, God sent me some really great people to help me navigate that time in my life that didn't make me feel worse than I was already feeling.
Yep.
But I remember this one story. I'd gone through, this consumer proposal, which is, one step above bankruptcy and, all of these things. I got everything in place that I needed to protect me from, litigation, to pay back what I could and make right what I could at that point in my life. And, fast forward, I think it was a year or 2 years later, I ended up paying off this proposal, which was quite fast. I did it, way faster than I had to, which I was very happy about. I was very proud of. And I had shifted so much in my life and done so much work on the shame that I felt around going through that process. And, normally when I would call the bank or wherever I needed to call to, talk about certain things, I would explain the whole story. Me and my ex, we had a breakup and our house was worth half of, what we owed on it. And there was like this whole spiel that I would go through as an explanation. And it was really an explanation for me, like, don't think so badly about me because this is all the crap that I went through and, whatever. I'm not just some dumb kid that just got, a million credit cards and racked them up and decided to walk away from them. There was a story behind it that I guess justified it in my mind, or justified, I don't know, me not feeling so bad about it. But I remember this one time, I had paid everything off and the bank actually owed me money because it ended up that I had overpaid. Mm-hmm. And I was irritated because they still hadn't sent me the check and it was like a couple $1,000s that they owed me. And so I called the bank and instead of this song and dance of, oh, this happened and all of this justification, I just went right to the meat and potatoes because I had no shame around it anymore. It happened in my life. It was a huge learning lesson. I'm proud of myself and how I handled all of it. 25 years old and it got me here and I'm proud of where I am right now. So I just phoned and I talked to this lady and I was like, hey, so I had a consumer proposal. I paid it off early. I paid too much for said account. You guys owe me money. Can you tell me if the check is there? And there was no emotion around it. Mm-hmm. And she stopped and she said, what did she say? Oh, have you learned your lesson? No. Yeah. And that, the whole reason why I would tell the whole story was to avoid that, because it's like a hot poker being seared into my body of like,
oh my gosh,
wow, bring up all the emotion and the trauma and like call me a piece of crap right to my face.
Right.
And I just stopped and I took a breath because I knew she didn't know. Mm-hmm. But she was just making an assumption about me and about my life and about the reason why I was calling and all of this stuff. And I said, yeah, I did learn my lesson. And she's like, what? And I was like, I learned my lesson that, when you buy property with, someone that's not your boyfriend, that things can get pretty messy. Mm-hmm. I learned that going through a recession and, a housing market value dropping 50% can be really messy for your life. I learned that I knew nothing about finances then versus what I do now. And I know now how many people actually go through the exact same thing as what I went through. And I learned to have compassion, not only for them, but for myself. Boom. And she's like, I'm so sorry. And I was really proud of myself that day because I let my heart drive the car rather than ego. Because I could have just went into this like, what do you know about me? My, this and this happened, whatever, right? Like you shouldn't be like that. But because I came from this space, this heart-centered space, she took a step back. And I bet you that changed the course of her life.
Absolutely.
How she deals with people, the assumptions that she makes about other people. Because I know it changed me. Mm-hmm. I have less judgment for others because I went through that experience and I know what it's like to walk in those shoes. And that's how we learn in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think how amazing that you were able to like drop into your heart and just say it the way that it is, and not get inflamed mm-hmm. and say whatever it is that would have come out of inflammation, right? From that egoic place. Mm-hmm. You probably gave her a real lesson. Yeah, she learned something that day.
She apologized.
Yeah.
And you could tell it was an authentic apology. Mm-hmm. She did assume up to that point that anybody that was going through that was just some dumb kid mm-hmm. that was irresponsible. And mm-hmm. I think that was a huge eye opener for her, that it happens to more than just that set of circumstances.
Definitely.
This is how we learn, is by being mm-hmm. vulnerable. Without that conversation, she'd still be asking the same question. And she's still like, she had no right to say it the way that she did.
Right.
And and I think she understood that after that conversation, but handled with, like you said, Heather, that inflammation of, if I would have just flew off the handle, she never would have learned anything. And that's not why we're here. We're here to help one another.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So Heather, why do you think that there's this distortion of the ego from a spirituality perspective? Because we said, this is a distortion meant to keep you separate from humanity, separate from your true power and feeling alone in this big universe. Like, why?
I think it's so that you can give and receive lessons. I mean, because if you don't have that perspective of separation, then it's all just one mishmash, right? Like if you don't have that perspective of the distance or the separation, you don't have that like almost like individuality, right? I am different than them. They are different than me, And so if you don't have that perspective, then you really would come here with the belief and the idea that we are all one and we are all connected, right? But that wasn't the point in Earth School.
Yeah.
Earth School wasn't the experiment of Earth was not we are all one and we are all connected, right? The experiment of Earth is that we are separate and good and evil coexists. That was the point, right? And you can't see that without the ego, right? The ego is the thing that creates that distortion. It creates that difference of perspective. So really, like, while we would all love to just throw our egos in the trash or run them down the garbage disposal, we can't, because it would take away that perspective. So from a spiritual place, I would say that the ego is very important, even though it may cause problems for us along the way, or, it may lead us into something that we don't necessarily want to experience. It's important that we have it because it gives us that perspective of comparison.
Yeah. And now with this time that we're in of ascension, I think that's why this shift is difficult for some people of being separate, being different, and acknowledging that you're special. Because we've distorted ego so much that being proud of your accomplishments has been distorted into this thing of you're an egomaniac,
Right.
You're too prideful, you're whatever, you've got a big ego, versus understanding that you are special and that specialness is connected to the whole, and yet you are separate.
Right. You can be an individual and be part of oneness. Like, it's okay. You don't have to give everything, be everything for everybody all the time. You can still have your individuality and be a part of something. It's like being part of a sports team. You're still the cool chick, even though you're the goalie on the soccer team, right? Like, you're part of a team. You're all working together for the common cause of winning the game. But that doesn't mean that you're not still, just a regular chick.
Well, and that you don't have a specific role to play within the team. I think this team example is very powerful because, there's the goalie, there's, the forward line, there's, I don't know anything about sports, so I'm going to stop there. But every player that is on that field has a specific role and mission that is essentially different than the rest. But you need the rest to come together as a whole to play the game. You can't play the game without all of them. And that goes right back to what we were saying of we need to come together and ask for assistance with one another. It's that, that is it symbiotic relationship between the players and them stepping into their individual strengths in their role on the field that really creates the magic and creates power.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so how do we ask for help?
Please
how do we get
me.
how do we get over it? That's so easy to say. Well, just get over yourself and
Mhm.
just ask for help. Well, if you're stuck, I guess the first thing that I would say is you need to notice it.
Right. You have to recognize you need the help, right? Like, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to fix everything yourself. You have to understand that it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to think that you look bad. It's okay to not always look good. Because the thing is that all that shit does is keep you stuck, right? Just be vulnerable. Like, okay, it's easy for us to sit here on this side and say, oh, just ask, right? Just ask for the help, right? But the reality is your ego is going to be like, no, you don't need it. I got you. It's okay that you live in a shoebox and you have no money and, everybody in your life has left you. But the thing is that if you just stop for a second and you look at the situation objectively, and you say ego and neutral. Okay. Ego and neutral. This will instantly trigger that piece of you to just be like, okay, I am not going to get involved. Ego and neutral. And then look at what it is that you've got going on. Okay. When you start feeling that inflammation come up, ego and neutral. Okay. And as you do this and you become more practiced at that, you'll actually be able to look at your life from the objective lens. It's hard to see the picture when you're standing inside the frame, right? We've all heard that phrase. And what you're basically doing is you're saying, I'm stepping out of the frame and I'm going to look at the picture as if it doesn't even relate to me. Right? You start looking at your life from the perspective of, this isn't my life, this is someone else's life. You get an entirely different level of clarity. You can look at it and go, oh man, dang, that's not good. I should work on that.
But it's not as charged.
Right.
When you're stepping outside of the frame, I always talk about it being like a higher level look at what's going on, or looking at it from a perspective of somebody that loves you a lot, like a best friend. When you start looking at it from that perspective, I don't want to look bad. That phrase, well, what happens when you do admit that, you're feeling X, Y, and Z, or you're struggling with this or that? The people around you they start to gravitate towards you because they have a skill that they can provide to you, or maybe advice on, something they went through, but they're really seeing themselves through you in that moment and having a new layer of compassion for you and love for you. And they want to love you through it. Not judge you or tell you look bad. They see themselves and how they struggled when you admit that you're going through those things. So you don't end up looking bad at all. You end up looking human, and you end up being more relatable because we're all having a human experience.
Right. So for people who know me in my personal life, they know that I historically have struggled with my weight. Okay. I have been large, I have been small, and I've been everywhere in between. And I have someone very close to me in my life who also struggles with their weight on the other end. So we have completely opposite problems, right? I struggle with keeping my weight at a reasonable size, and they struggle with keeping the weight on. And what's really fascinating is, even though we have complete polar opposite problems, we have the same psychological problem. So even though we are individually experiencing complete opposite things, we have the same mindset issues around it. And I think that is a really important thing to understand, is that just because you're going through something and you're keeping it, close to the chest, you're not sharing it with anybody, you being closed and letting that ego keep you closed up, somebody else who's having maybe the same exact problem, you could lean on one another because you see each other from objective eyes, even though you're dealing with the same problem. So I think that you sharing what it is that you're going through, being authentic, putting your ego in neutral, and actually being vulnerable with somebody, you're helping them just as much as you are getting the help that you need.
Yeah. Boom.
Boom.
So we should just be vulnerable and just ask.
Exactly.
And maybe something that might be helpful is to find a couple key people in your life that you know will love you no matter what. And everybody's got them. And if you don't have them, have one, just keep looking around, because there are people in your life that will love you no matter what. And then you have us.
Yeah.
We will love you.
We'll love you.
We'll love on you. But find those people in your life that have that compassion, or maybe it is a coach or something like that, to love you through this part that you can start practicing being open and vulnerable with. For me, I used to be quite like manic and like very steel. There was nothing here, just like happy. One of our good friends, she actually told me when I first started dating my husband, and I knew her before I had met Nate. And I remember, I can't remember how long we'd known each other, but it was, a couple of years at least. And I remember her saying after I started dating Nate, she said, I hadn't realized, but you never actually smiled. Like all of your smiles before were fake. And I didn't know either until I was introduced to Nate and, actually was learning to enjoy myself and have that joy and that bliss in my life. My smile changed. I completely changed. But yeah, so just having people in your life that are rooting for you no matter what, and start practicing opening up with them with things that are tough, because it's about going through that experience and getting a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more comfortable. And then it just becomes easy to start talking about really tough things in front of people.
Right. Well, and I think that if you look at like psychology, let's just talk about psychology for a second. If you look at psychology, people who are going through psychological work, the psychologist may suggest to them, say you've got a troubled marriage. We'll use a troubled marriage, for example. They will say something like, you should go experience something new together. And the reason that going and experiencing something new for the first time together is so powerful is because you're both in a place of scared, unknowing what's going to happen. Right. And you go there and you do the thing and you experience the thing together for the first time. And when you come out the other end, you have bonded over something new that could have been scary. I mean, it could have been like going on a roller coaster ride. It could have been just, taking a trip. It could be anything, right? Just being alone with that person could be scary, right? And so the thing is that, that creates a bonding process. So if you have these experiences with people, you could be terrified to share what it is that you're going through, but them being on the receiving end of the sharing and you being on the sharing end of the sharing, it creates this bond, this connection, this I see myself in you, sharer, and I love you for that.
One of the most craziest exercises that I had to do with vulnerability, I remember in one class, we were in a class of like 30 people, and it was a personal development thing. And, we'd spent, I think it was a 3-day course. So we'd spent 2 days together, and this was the very last day. So we're sharing some pretty vulnerable things already, but this took the cake. So if you really want to just dive right in and do something crazy, here's one for you. We had to all stand in 2 rows. So 15 and 15, and then you're standing in front of somebody, they're right here, and you could hold their hands, you didn't have to, but you stood and you looked right into their eyes, and you didn't break eye contact. You could blink, but you couldn't look away. And all you could do was just look into their eyes. And I think it was 2 or 3 minutes long. It was the longest 2 minutes of my life. And at first you're so uncomfortable. You're just like giggling and like whatever. And then you relax, and it's like you are naked in front of this person. They are just seeing everything within your eyes. It's the most vulnerable and uncomfortable I'd ever been, but it really cracked me open because I felt safe in that space. So do it with somebody that, you feel safe with, but being in that 2 minutes really allowed me to be seen, unfiltered by this person. They were really looking into my soul, and it's a life changer.
That is a very, very powerful exercise. I've also experienced that exercise, and it's amazing. I mean, and this was complete strangers, so, there was probably, I don't know, maybe 500 people.
Oh, wow.
In the room. And, they basically took us in like 3 waves. And you were literally standing, face to face with complete strangers, and you're like close, and you're just staring at each other. And you're right, it's totally awkward at first, but then it's like, I think I was like bawling my eyeballs out because I could see this person in front of me so clearly, and I could sense everything that they had gone through in their life. And, I could feel the pain that they held so closely. And in that experience, it was just like unconditional love, right? When you see the soul of another person through their eyes, you see that there is behind all that bullshit that they wear as a mask, they are just complete unconditional love deep down.
Yeah. Being a coach and teaching what I teach inside of the Fluid Money Blueprint has been a real gift for me, because seeing so many people go through the program. And when the program first started, I used to review every single journal entry and then provide feedback. I would channel feedback. And it's so crazy because there would be, so many different kinds of people inside of this group, people who, you look at them and you think they're doing really, really well. And, they've got it all together and they're perfect. And like all different various kinds of people that you just thought were just amazing people, had everything together. And then I would go through their journal, and it was just so mind-blowing that the majority of the people were saying the exact same thing. I don't feel worthy. I, don't feel good enough. All of these insecurities that I have had in my life, I could see through all of them, regardless of the front that they brought to the world. And that's, I think, the reason why it's powerful to share those things. Again, you're seeing, yourself within those people, but it creates this fabric of compassion, of care, of unconditional love within the world that the world really needs at this time. Is more love. But this is how we do it. We actually bare our soul and come clean about the things that we've got rattling around inside of our head, and it creates that fabric. It's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I went through more the first time, I went twice. So when I went through more the first time, I remember, doing those journal entries, and, you being like, let's look at this. Let's dig into this thing. And, and what was really interesting, if I go back and look at that now, I will see how I had projected so much of my own insecurities onto people in my life. Yeah. And like, oh, well, they're like this, and so therefore that's why I'm like this, or I've been surrounded with this, and so that's why I'm the way that I am. Right. And, and I'm someone who's pretty tapped in. Right. Like I can read energy like a book. Right. And so I think it's really hilarious now looking back on that time in my life as, wow, like, look at how awesome my ego was and how like perfectly coordinated it was for me to be able to launch all my stuff onto somebody else. It's because of this. It's because of this. It's this reason. Nope, that person over there did it to me, and that one. And then this is why I ended up like this is because of that. And I don't want to be like that, right? But the reality is this is all just this ego perspective of like, oh no, it's not you. It's all of these other things.
It's everybody else.
Everybody else has created this for you, right?
But and it takes away your power. Sorry for interrupting.
Absolutely.
But it takes away your power. Like if you are the ultimate creator and you're creating your reality, if you're saying it's that one and that one and that one and that one that did this to me, and you're sitting in this place of being a victim, and I mean, I think there's a difference between being a victimized and continuously becoming a victim or being a victim in this moment. And when you're sitting in that seat of this victim and like, there's nothing I can do about somebody else. It's all of them that need to change. And then my reality will change. Well, you've just given away all of your power to all of the other people that are surrounding you. And when you start to see that it was the reflection, you start to see those parts of you. It's like the ego is hiding these parts from you so that you can't move past it, ascend past it, and evolve into the person that you were meant to be, because you don't even see it there. It's like this huge blind spot that you've created out of fear that, you know, if I see it, then all hell is going to break loose. But truly it's not. It's you coming into your own power when you do see it, because then you have the ability to do something different, change it, reframe it for yourself, see it from a new perspective, heal it, forgive, whatever it is. You have options versus if you just stick your head in the sand and you never see it, you can't change that part of you or that reality that you're trying to change.
Yeah. Well, once you can see it, it takes its power away. Yeah. I mean, that is the whole point of that, you know, like.
So we got to shine a spotlight.
Exactly.
On all the parts.
Yep.
On all the parts.
Even those ugly, hairy mole areas.
They're so beautiful.
They're so beautiful.
They're still beautiful. They're here for a reason. And, you know, that's truly a lonely place to be when you're just trying to be perfect and trying to, you know, shelter the world from really seeing all of those things that are tough to see or that you feel aren't good enough or, you know, not pretty enough or perfect enough for the rest of the world. You're really holding pieces of yourself back that are beautiful pieces that others in the world need to see, like you coming together as all of you, the good, the bad, the ugly, all the beautiful, all of it in between, and owning all of it. People need to see that so that they can do it for themselves, so that we can all ascend and grow into the next phase of what Earth will become. Because I think as you said it before, you know, we came to Earth to see our individuality and to see that there was this duality, the negative and the positive, or the polarity, the light and the dark. And I do think also that the Earth is changing, that we are shifting big time in this ascension period. And we were meant to see what was great about us individually. And if you didn't catch that memo before and you're on the tail end of it, this is your time to do that, of seeing why you're so great, all of you, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. And then as you do that, that will help you ascend to being a part of this new fabric that's being created of oneness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I had a really good friend. I'll tell one more story before we wrap up, because I think we're getting close here. But I had a very, very good friend who struggled hugely with digestive problems. I mean, the list of things that this human being could not eat was 25 miles long. There was literally like 5 things this person could eat. And it was just because it always created problems in their gut. And as, you know, this person navigated their digestive situation, I would say, well, have you looked at the energetics behind it? You know, have you looked at the energetics behind it? And, you know, I'm like, there is something energetic. This is no longer a health thing. This is an energy thing. So let's look at the energetics of it. And so we started looking at the energetics of it. And, you know, we found stuff from past lives, cleared some of that stuff out, worked on some things. And ultimately, what it boils down to, and to this day, this person still struggles with this digestive situation. And it is because they live from this place of, I'm going to be all smiles, bliss, and happy, right? They have worked so hard on making their mind, their ego, this piece of them so strong. They've strengthened this muscle so much that they cannot possibly be vulnerable because they have to put on the happy face. They have to be all smiles. They have to be sunshine and light, right? But we all know that underneath all that sunshine and bullshit is a broken little girl that needs to be healed. And it's all manifesting in their solar plexus, where all those memories are stored. And if she would just get real with herself, all of that shit, the hook she feels in her digestive tract, would resolve. This is how powerful the ego can be, because she doesn't want to be vulnerable, be honest, and look at the shit. The shit's just going to cling to her.
Yeah.
Forever, maybe.
It's going to stay.
It's going to stay.
Yeah. You got to shine a light on it.
Yep. Because once you see it, it doesn't have any power anymore.
Yeah. I think it was Sheryl Sandberg said, once you see it, you can't help but change it. Such a beautiful quote. It's true.
Amazing.
You know, once you see it, you can't help but change and grow and learn from what you're experiencing.
Yep.
Yeah. If you're enjoying this conversation, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and the like button, and maybe share it with like 10 of your friends. We're working on getting our own special handles. So we're looking to get more subscribers just like you. So make sure you do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. Any final words on, how the ego stops us from asking for help and why it's so important that we do?
Just let it go. Ego in neutral. For the next week, practice that. Every time you start feeling that inflammation, take a second, ego in neutral, and then look at it again. Ego in neutral, look at it again, and just see if it changes the way that you move about your day. You might be surprised.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for being with us. We will see you next week with another great topic. That's all for now. Bye.
Bye.